Hi. So I was reading this book by MMK. It's called For Pavillion. MMK is a colonial writer. She lived in India in the 40s and 50s. And she writes about India during the colonial era. I read her last book, The Shadow of the Moon, that was set during the mutiny, a love story in the backdrop of the Indian mutiny. And then I started reading this one. This is For Pavillion. This is started around that time, and then it probably continues. She writes well. I mean, and I as I said, I love India. So, I love India in the colonial era. So I love reading these books. And she writes well about that time, about the people, the country, the landscape. It's well written, and obviously she is not overtly racist or anything. Otherwise, I wouldn't be liking it. So that's the point. But after reading Hunt, but she is, as I said, certainly promotes colonialism, right, of that era. So after reading 100 pages of this book, I just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, this book is set, as I said, in just after the mutiny, and this is about a British boy who became orphaned during the mutiny and was raised by a Indian mother, and he didn't know that he was British. So Ittifaq say he became the retinue of a young prince in a princely state. And then that's the story that was going on. I read 100 pages and I just couldn't take it anymore. And I'll tell you why I couldn't take it anymore. So this colonial writers, no, they have this subtle way of pushing their agenda. They're pushing their propaganda about how good British colony in India was. I mean, same thing happened in the last book that I read about The Shadow of the Moon. About she was trying to say how great East India Company was. It's just few bad people. If you just could fix that, it would be great. India would have been the heaven on earth under the company. I mean, think about the audacity of that narrative is. I mean, a company ruling a country and she thinks that if you could just fix a few officers, it was somehow okay, and they could have ruled India the best. And the same thing happens here. So she's talking about contrasting the story about how she is pushing her agenda about this orphan boy, the British boy, about how and he is the friend of the prince, and he is showing how that prince is effeminate, characterless, weak, coward, and he's given to pomp and ceremony, and he has no character essentially, and he just lives a foppish life. Compare that with this guy, this British guy. Even though he is a pauper, he is a servant, but he is bold, he has character, he is strong, he is sagacious, and he's always right. He protects that prince, and so on and so forth. And this is the narrative that goes on for all colonial writers. That is the theme by which they push their agenda. And they do it so successfully that the most absurd untruth in human history, they could somehow make it appear true with their propaganda. I mean, imagine a country which is, 15,000 kilometers away, living their life, a happy, prosperous, beautiful country, and they come in here, they conquer it, they rob their people, they subjugate them, they torture them, they take away their way of life, they destroy their way of life, they take away their livelihood, and they make them poor and, as I said, the bottom of the human pit. And they somehow peddle it as if it's good for them, it's good for us. That's the power of propaganda, and that's part of this, what is going on. And of course, the way they did it is because they are full control of the English language, all other media, the print media, the newspaper, the books, the libraries, And then came the radio and the movies, and then eventually the television. So they control all of them, and they kept on hammering this idea. And then they had other subtle mechanism of promoting this untruth, is by giving Indian students scholarship, taking them over there, indoctrinating them into this falsehood, and then sending back to India, and so they can teach us, the other Indians, same story. So they were rather successful, and as I said, nowhere this propaganda is most, comes alive, where they contrast the princely India with the actual British Raj, the part of India that was ruled directly by the British. So during the British Raj, 2/3 of India back then was the whole of India, like from Afghanistan to Burma. The entire India, 2/3 of it was ruled directly by the British Crown with a viceroy and then bureaucrats under him, and then 1/3 of it was ruled by the princely states, the local rulers, the kings, the princes, the Hyderabad, the Mysores, the Rijams. They used to take care of the local government, the roads, the education, the healthcare, and that kind of stuff. And then they were forced to station a British army over there, and then they were forced to pay for that army and for the rest, and so on and so forth. So that's how the whole arrangement was. And the British were left, though, no opportunity behind to caricature this princely rulers. And if you read every book, and you see any movie, including even up until Steven Spielberg and his Indiana Jones movies, you see the caricature of the princely states. The rulers are shown as I said, the cruel, effeminate, given to pleasure, and their whole purpose is to aggrandize their wealth and to have satisfy their carnal lust. From the moment they wake up till the time they go to bed, their only purpose is to grab the next diamond and to grab the next girl to have sex with them. That's it. That's their whole purpose in life. They didn't care anything about their own state. They didn't care about the well-being of their people. They just didn't. And they were, as I said, they were cruel, and they were uneducated, they were characterless, they were coward. That's the local ruler. And they had all sorts of eccentricities. They waited dogs, and they had big palaces, and they had Rolls Royces, and so on and so forth. And contrast that with the British India, the India ruled by the viceroy and his lieutenants and the ICS and the civil servants. That India was like, wow. These rulers and their subordinates, the ICS people, the district magistrates and collectors, they were like bold, with character, sagacious. They were wisdom. They had wisdom. They were truthful. They were honest. They're noble, educated. They knew everything. Okay, and their only purpose in life is to do good for this country and the people of this country. The moment they wake up till the moment they sleep, their only purpose is to do the upliftment of the people under their care. That's the narrative that was pushed. And of course, they were dictatorial. They were dictators. They had to be. Why wouldn't they? Because they are ruling over little better people than chimps, us. Right? We're chimps. They couldn't consult us. They knew what good for us, so they did whatever is supposed to be. And they did good. Compare that with those cowardly, wretched, lecherous prince. That's the narrative that was pushed relentlessly and successfully through all the media, and this is the exact opposite, which couldn't be false. I mean, most of the Indian states were better ruled than the actual the British provinces. I mean, places like Mysore or Baroda were much better ruled than Odisha or UP. If you look at their life expectancy, look at their education, look at their healthcare, the roads, everything was better off, and there is reason for that. The main reason being, as I said, the ruler being local, they were well connected, they could understand their problem better, they could respond to their problem better, and these rulers were far from, as I said, the lecherous, cowardice, cruel monsters that they are being portrayed. Most of them were well educated. They went to Europe to study the modern education in England and France and anywhere else. Came and this is Indian, what do you call, prudence. We always had that, right? So it was not possible that we were, as I said, the way they were portraying us, cruel monsters and driven to sexual predatory. That's absolutely not true. I mean, of course, there were exceptions. There was possible. There are small kingdoms where people did behave, and where were not exceptions. You look at Europe, and they're full of exceptions. They're full of eccentric rulers all over Europe who did all sorts of monstrous things in the same era. But no, they were somehow exempt, but not us, not our rulers. Where are our rulers when they are doing amazing things? The Barodas or the Mysores or the Nizams or the Koch Bihars, they were not mentioned anywhere. If you take the actual statistics about how the Indian states fared compared to the British ruled provinces, it's much better. At least the big Indian states did much better. But if you see the propaganda, you will not see it anywhere. And of course, there are propaganda like Catherine Mayer and stuff like that. That's like base propaganda. Leave that aside. That was very easy to penetrate. But the problem is with these people like MMK, which is the propaganda is subtle and promoted with beautiful literature and beautiful stories. There you miss it. You kind of don't get it, right? You get lost in the story. It's a beautiful story, and then you get lost into it. So that's, I was just trying to explain that part. And as I said, this propaganda was successful because there are people, even in the 40s and 50s and 60s, like Sir Vidya, Sir Naipaul, right? V.S. Naipaul and Neeraj C. Chaudhary, and there are people like them. They actually believed that colonial rule was good for India. I mean, how absurd can that get? How can that be good for India? And then, and those people I can understand. I mean, I can even forgive them because maybe they just didn't know. They didn't bother to understand, and they were blinded by propaganda. But what I cannot understand, I mean, after 200 years of that amazing rules, that is true that colonial rules is good in India. After 200 rules of that amazing good rule, in 1947 when they left, India was one of the worst places in the world. From one of the best places in the world, India was been reduced to be one of the poorest, the wretched poor, one of the shittiest places in the world. And those British, the same British propaganda machines, the BBCs, and I don't know, TV7 and whatever it is, those propaganda of the world said, hey, look how shitty India is. Look at them. They're savages. They're like a shithole in the world. And the same breath, they're saying, oh, look how great colonial India was. I mean, how are you going to square these two together? You ruled India for 200 years, then India should have been the heaven on earth if colonial rules were so great. Why are you calling India a shitty place? And in 70 years, we turned the whole thing around and we became so good that now we are competing almost at equal level with England. Right? So it is obvious like a daylight that colonial rule was absolutely pathetic for India. The worst part is, as I said, I could forgive the N.C. Chaudharys or Sir Vidyas of the world because they did not have at least the knowledge that how we turned things around in 70 years and we became again bounced back without colonial rule, how we bounced back as a country. But what I cannot forgive is the current people of India. There are certain section of people in India who somehow considers the British good. Why? Not because the colonials were good, but because they think that the British has delivered us from the Muslims, the Turks, the Mongols. How? First of all, We didn't need any saving from the Mughals or the Turks. Why? Because we were not bad under them. See, the Mughals didn't bring in people from Fargana to rule over us, or from Turkey. They employed local people. Whatever we produced in India stayed in India. They built roads, they built places, hospitals, schools for India, because they were us. Whatever the religious differences were, well, of course there were fighting and killings. Leave that aside. But they didn't take away 90% of our wealth and shift somewhere else. No. So we didn't need any savings. And even if we did, by the time British came to India, India was not ruled by the Mughals and the evil Turks. India was under Hindu rule. It was ruled by the Marathas and the Sikhs. So where is the saving coming from? Please don't read your history and don't give that credit to the colonials. There is no credit to be given. This is just absurd. I'm sorry, I keep ranting about it, but it's just so absurd, and I like the book. This one, and I'm sure I'm going to go back to it. The book is very well written. Anyway, thanks for watching.